you guys want to start signing this.
What's this?
There's a note that she's.
Going away, is it you? Sign our own cards.
You would have filed a slap.
Thank goodness we don't have big messes in there.
Where are we going? Do that in this one.
Does it max?
Yeah.
I don't think it matters.
You got a full minute if you want to keep yapping at something.
I got,
Just the librarian.
I've been waiting a long time.
I got on a plane last week and randomly ran into Chad Swear, and I were sharing a plane together. It's kind of funny.
That's right, you got your handbag back.
No, I wasn't actually. It was the first leg. I was going to tell her.
And he is, he's in.
Weren't you just recently in Florida? Okay.
I can't remember what it was, but yes.
Time is really.
You got a second home down there, I think.
I asked Swear if he was gonna get license plates while he was down there.
No, we just shared the leg to Minneapolis. He was with a bunch of his daughter's teammates.
Were they all squealing and?
Yes,
and little girls?
yeah.
Were they cheering?
And then on my way back, they're all doing, it was a different group, but our plane was delayed and we were doing cartwheels and somersaults and stuff in the middle of the airport. Wasn't their group, but I assume was at the same competition.
So I spent my way over. Yep, that's a cartwheel, lots of cartwheels.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, welcome this evening. Do we have any additions to the agenda?
Mayor and council, just a few additions here. Under consent agenda, I'd like to add a waiver agreement with the city of Worthing to use their baseball field, softball field. We have 2 part-time officers we'd like to add to the hiring list as well.
Okay. So under consent agenda, would be item Q, field use agreement.
Yep.
Okay, and then
R,
would be the 2 part-time officers.
yes,
Okay.
thank you.
All right, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carries. On to 2 visitors to be heard. Any visitors to be heard this evening? Okay. To consent agenda, any items you want to draw attention to this evening, Nate?
A few items, Mayor and Council. First of all, under the performance management report, I just draw attention to one item there. The third slide, sales tax revenue continues to do well this year. All 3 months have been over last year's, and it looks like this month will be as well. So we're feeling fairly confident about that, even if other larger communities are not. I don't know if anybody's seen the news that Sioux Falls is experiencing a decline in their sales tax revenue. I'm hoping that if there is a change here economically, that as a smaller community where sales tax is usually coming from the necessities, that we're hopefully somewhat protected there. We've got 5 seasonal employees we'd like to hire tonight as recreational assistants. So these are really backups to our others. These are all current lifeguards, so newer lifeguards that may not otherwise have a ton of hours. So we're going to pull double duty in our concession stands. Got some amended job descriptions to reflect current duties up front. An agreement with United Way to provide a grant for AEDs for our concession stands. A grant for Poet for the library, and a treatment proposal for, I think it was 13 ash trees in the park. So Under our bid did come in under expectations for ash removal. I feel pretty good about this proposal. Given that it'll give our trees a couple more years of protection before we have to go back in again.
That was for $3,000 roughly.
3,500, I think.
Good.
3,050, correct.
Yeah. The United Way grant, that's a done deal, right? Congrats, that's great. And having AEDs at the ballparks, I mean, you hate to ever have to use one, but they make a dramatic difference if you do.
Right.
So nice that we've got that covered, and kudos to our Parks and Rec leader for her past relationships and getting that accomplished. That's very, very awesome. Our poet grant is in application stage for library, or?
Yes.
Okay, good luck on that. I hope that comes to pass. Be nice to see that upgraded and updated,
Little furniture update.
right? Right. It's good to keep it out there and see what's available. And to the city staff, awesome job getting the rebate checks all completed. That was quite an arduous task, but nice work. I know it took everybody to pull together and pull it off, but I have heard a lot of good feedback from residents that weren't aware, and then they get a check in the mail and thought, holy cow.
Sure, interesting.
Well, I'll read this now and see why. But yeah, kind of cool. And now we're seeing the instant credits on the bills. You know, it's good we got that the programming or coding proper in our software, so it actually happens seamlessly, and we don't have to go through that task again. But we're seeing, you know, immediate impact for residents with that. Very cool.
I think it's a reminder that no matter how much effort we put out there to get the word out about certain things, and this one we really pushed out a lot of effort. There's still people that we're just not reaching. So just reminds us we need to renew our efforts to reach out.
Yeah, no doubt. I see that you talked to South Dakota Municipal League about hosting their annual gathering next year.
Yes, yeah,
That's
the
exciting.
district meeting.
It'd be fun to get a group of 150 people coming to Lennox.
It'd be great. Looking forward to showing off the town a little bit and doing a little bit of not so humble bragging about the things that have been happening here the last few years.
Yeah, for sure. Our team that put together the playground equipment over at Westerman Park, they've got huge smiles on their faces. Every day you walk by, every evening, and it's just chock full of people having a good time at the park. And that's really fun to see our community out and active. So nice work there. Pickleball's been going great. I play in the spring league. I think there's 22 of us that play, plus a whole bunch of moving parts depending on if people are busy, you know. And then you get a sub that fills in, and Hank brings yet another teacher to learn pickleball. It's fun to teach them. But yeah, it's been good. It's been good. Happy to see that our streets team is already addressing overhanging branches and necessary trimming, identifying that throughout the winter so we can take action here this spring. That's honestly really awesome to see that we're being proactive, or at least have the time to be proactive. I know with winter being a down year from a snow perspective, you get to do things and maybe get ahead.
Yes.
So very exciting. And I don't see Kyle, but maybe you could help me out here on wastewater treatment facility with the influent valve replacement that's scheduled for mid-May.
Yep.
What does that all entail? Could you give me just a brief overview? Is it
Yeah, I
shut
can. I'm not
down
gonna do
the
it
plant?
justice. So there's an influent valve. So influent is everything that's coming into the plant and into those basins. It's got this actuator on it we've worried about in the past. So basically it's down in a vault, and it's opening and closing those valves that go to our treatment basins. And so if that thing fails, our only option is to divert it to our emergency storage or discharge it. So this is one of those items that was ordered November, December, if I remember right. Because we know it's got a long lead time, and we wanted to have it available. This was something that needs to be repaired right away, though. I mean, we had an issue with it, I want to say it was last summer, and decided we should probably just go ahead and take care of it, so we don't have any further issues.
Do we have another one coming?
I'll have to check.
What's that process look like to change it out down in the vault?
It's a tight space, I mean, it's confined space, so we have to have 2 people available.
Do we have air monitors?
Well, we may, I don't know that we're actually doing the change out. I think the electric pump is going to be doing it, but I believe the pump has been, or I think the valve has been received, I don't think we have it installed yet, so. I'll see if I can get Kyle to provide a little bit more info through that, either in the next update or we can briefing.
Good, thank you. Nice that he's got the Cub Scouts coming out to tour the wastewater treatment facility. That'll be fun with all those different eyes and young minds looking at it from a perspective that all of us old callous people don't quite often share. Pretty cool. I'm glad that we have that outreach available for groups in our community. And I do always want to stress that everyone is welcome as a resident of Lennox to go out, schedule some time, and go take a tour of the wastewater treatment facility. We obviously show up and knock on the door, that's not great, because you never know you're in the middle of something, but reach out and schedule it, and the guys out there are thrilled to show off everything that happens out there. They take great pride in the fact that we actually treat the water. We have bacteria that actually decomposes all the waste that goes out there, and we come out with a clean product when it's all said and done. We're not just holding it and waiting it to evaporate and smell. It's a cool it's a cool plant, and it does a hell of a job for us.
Yeah, we always like to point out that when we send water to Long Creek, what we're sending there is cleaner than what's actually in there. And I think that's an important point for us. I know we've got our spring seasons launched for Parks and Rec. How smooth did it go? Was it challenging as always, simply because of the past inventory, learning a new system? I think let's be blunt, I think with any other employee it would have been more of a hassle. But I think our Parks and Rec director kind of takes the bull by the horns and figures it out. When we do hit bumps, she gets over them through them pretty quickly. So I would say the bumps have been minimal compared to a normal year. We've got the field use schedule coming out soon. The practice schedule is out already. And I've heard from several people that the communication is significantly better than it ever has been.
Fantastic.
How are the numbers?
12U was down, obviously, because we had a 12 and 11U team decided to do their own thing. 10U, I think we had 3 or 4 teams in baseball. 14U, we still fielded a softball team. So I think it's 3 years in a row now we've got a 14U softball team.
I'm coaching 12U, and we have 2 teams,
Two
which
teams.
I know several years ago, so softball might be different than baseball this year now, but several years ago, we couldn't get a 14U team together, so.
That's right.
I feel that's positive on the softball side.
Yeah, we were a little bit concerned that with high school softball starting, that folks might just opt out of 14U softball, and that has not been the case at all.
I think that's actually helping the growth
I
for
agree.
softball is the school program.
I would agree.
Nice.
Are the batting cages completely done now?
They've been used. They were being used this afternoon when I drove through and again tonight.
They're scheduled for use right now, I'm sure.
Probably.
Somebody's out there.
We did have an issue with the net on the old batting cage, but I think they're working on getting that figured out. Yeah, so.
So
Batting,
is the old
batting
one
cage,
is in use as well? Because I was over there.
that'll maintain use. It's
Okay,
not,
so there's 3 then?
correct.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, no doubt. So we're looking at some possible minor improvements, like making sure we have electrical closer for pitching machines, those kinds of things, so that we don't have to run that extension cord like 100 feet. So.
Parks are all looking nice. I think we got new aggregate put down over at West Evergreen around the playground equipment.
Yes, yep.
That looks
We
really
had a lot of extra from Westerman Parks
Is that-
playground projects, so we spread it around.
nice. Nice, looks good.
Yep.
Any other comments, questions?
Motion to approve consent agenda?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as amended with the items Q and R, field use agreement and 2 part-time officers approval. We'll do roll call. Doherty,
Aye.
Welch,
Aye.
Mauer,
Aye.
and Jerome,
Aye.
Bowers.
Aye.
All right, motion carries.
I did forget one comment. I'm so sorry, but I wanted to ask Audra how Lego Week went. It sounded like a lot of fun.
Oh, like a week?
Yeah,
So we tried something a little bit different than just regular Lego Club going like, for a 4-week period. So we tried just like an open session. It was a little bit of a struggle. We didn't get very many kids. that signed up. We had about 4, I think, per the 4 nights of it. But those that did come had a blast, and so I think when we do it again next year, it'll flourish a little bit more. I think we'll do a few more of those than just the regular come every 4 weeks type of thing, so.
Yeah,
Pick a date, come and build and do whatever you want, so.
you rounded up some pretty decent donations of Legos for that, correct?
No, we've just had our regular Legos.
Just regular Legos?
Just regular,
Yeah.
yep, just our regular Legos.
So-
Yep. Yeah, a lot of summer reading donations, but not Lego donations yet. We're well stocked on Legos.
So we're not putting a cry out for help on a Lego quantity?
No.
Okay,
I'm running out of room to put them. Which is a good thing.
right. All right, thank you.
Yep.
My apologies.
Nope.
for the hijack.
That's right. All right, we'll move on to old business, housing study proposal.
Mayor and council, and hopefully people online can still hear us with the racket on the roof with the rain, but at the April 14 meeting, you requested additional information on the housing study and how that investment would be returned over time. I did mention at that meeting that past housing studies have been used for grant applications. I know I've used it for SRF applications and a development by TIF plan. Those need specific information, and that's a consistent source of that information, but it is available elsewhere. We can get more detailed access into the Census Bureau data, so I'm not very well versed in how that process works. While the grants have been significant, obviously with millions of dollars in SRF funds granted along the last few years, the TIF district on its own has produced about $30 million in value over the past 3 or 4 years. So, well, Eric Montclair is asking for the Wi-Fi password on my iPad. So there is clear value that comes from doing these housing studies. I think with the last meeting, I didn't really make much of a case for what this is and why it's useful. And so I did want to cover some of that tonight. I compare it in the memo to a checkup with your medical provider. Use your tools, check your vitals, run labs, other tests, all go telling where you're at, what you need to pay attention to. Housing study does that same thing, but with the goal of assessing your housing availability and affordability and identifying the gaps and opportunities that you can seize on. So I got a few things in there, a few bullet points for what a housing study does. And really, without a housing study, we can make broad assumptions about what important issues are when it comes to housing in the community. We have a broad variety of subject matter experts that can weigh in. I'd like to think that as city administrator and active in the community, I know a little bit about the housing market here, but I can't provide you with an evidence-based report that a housing study can. What I can provide would be entirely based on anecdotal evidence. That we need more rental and multifamily housing, for example, because we hear about it all the time here at City Hall. What I can't tell you is what level that demand is, what families are seeking for rentals, how many bedrooms we need, what price ranges we're missing, and any other detailed information about that. So that all requires an in-depth analysis of available data that we don't have. So as a growing community, we're going to have more decisions to make in the coming years, and as Countryside fills up much faster than any of us predicted, there are active development efforts on the west side and the east side of Lennox. And developers are consistently looking for the next opportunities. So we need to be prepared for those discussions, and the data involved available from the housing studies will help us with that.
Okay. Before we can bring this to a motion, I do have to ask for a motion to take this from the table, because we tabled it at our last meeting. So do I have a motion to take this from the table?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And motion carries. Now this is an official item, and they just went through the memo there. Is there any discussion?
So I think, our last housing study was 2019, and we had talked about significant changes that we've seen since the pandemic, and also just the market of housing, economic changes, presidential changes, just some significant things that I think it would have value. I know we can extract data and do analysis internally. My concern with that is we have a lot of very new high-level positions, and I'd like them to focus more on their day-to-day instead of adding this significant task onto our current workload.
Motion to approve the proposal from Torchlight.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing that there's none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. We are on to new business ordinance 658 noise restrictions.
Mayor and council, this ordinance comes at the request of the council in regard to several discussions we've had over the years on level of noise produced by idling semis at a commercial business. These should come to us several years after status quo that doesn't appear to have been resolved in any meaningful way. This was last before the city council in July 2021. At that time, the business at which the idling was taking place agreed to take some reasonable steps to restrict idling at the business, but unfortunately those efforts have not been as successful as we would have hoped. Neighbors have continued to reach out concerns, particularly with the overnight idling. So the city's existing ordinance around this activity and noise in general are not very strong, and certainly not strong enough to enforce on a regular basis. This ordinance is being proposed in order to do so, and it's product means between the mayor, police chief, and Alderman Doherty and myself. It addresses this in two ways. The first is restricting the idling of vehicles from 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. at filling stations or service stations in the general business and central business zones. It also restricts noise in all zones during certain hours and activities. That mirrors the Sioux Falls noise ordinance. The ordinance has been reviewed by the city attorney, provided to the business in question for their comments. Those comments are included in your packet. I also received comments late today from one of the neighboring properties and included that in your packet late this afternoon. I recommend the motion to approve first reading. In reviewing the property owner's comments from this afternoon, I think particular attention should be paid to the hours of their siting. Those are different than what are in the ordinance. So if there is an amendment to be made here, we can make it tonight, we can discuss tonight, we could go back and change it and come back at the next meeting, but leave it at your discretion.
So can you clarify, who would receive, like who would the police be citing? Is it the business owner? Is it the commercial vehicle driver?
From the zoning ordinance side, we would cite the property owner.
Okay.
So if there's a zoning ordinance violation, it would go that direction, though that's not typically how we would first handle it. We give it, like a code enforcement violation. We're gonna have a discussion first, a warning second, and maybe go from there. But that's a lengthy time period. We don't wanna just hand out zoning violations at the first sign of trouble.
My other question is, what is the penalty for the zoning violation?
$500 a day is a penalty, that's an ordinance. No, that's rarely the full penalty. We usually bring that down a little bit.
What typically happens with them is we discuss what the appropriate finding should be through council. Council will make the decision, and every year we post. When it comes to certain things underneath zoning, penalty is up to $500 is what we usually set it at. And depending on how, as what Nate said, with any time we deal with these type of things, it's not, we're just walking up there and slapping fines on desks. We're talking to people. We're trying to make it palatable for all parties involved.
I don't think in my time here we've ever actually issued a zoning violation for $500. I think it's usually been through a court order and we've asked for significantly less.
Is there a location that we can recommend if they need to idle that they relocate to?
Absolutely. We have established an area out from Industrial Avenue. It's in between the Sioux Steel buildings that we have always directed our overnight truck traffic to, especially when we start getting complaints, if we can reach drivers. Most people have been very receptive of it, especially our local ones that live in town. They know to park out there and they come into town through a personal vehicle. Or there's been a couple times where I've given them a ride.
So there's no issue with them parking on the street overnight in that industrial avenue?
Correct.
It's specifically permitted in our zoning ordinance for that reason.
We encourage it.
My only other comment was to Nate's point, I feel that the 8 to 8 might be a little too strict. I definitely feel, especially being in a rural area, that there might be trucks coming and going later into the evenings, especially into harvest, and then earlier in the morning. So I do feel that the citizens who made the recommendation from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. might be a little bit better in line with our traffic and, you know, just what we see in our community here.
I agree with that.
Is 7 early enough? If you want to start your day at 6, I mean, that's still a pretty reasonable hour.
Well, and I guess the ordinance too is also tied with a time limit, you know, so it's not a certain, it's not saying the truck can't be there at this time. It's
Just can't be idle.
Running.
Just, for, what was
I
the,
think it has to be actively loading or unloading or
yeah,
fueling.
Yes.
Right, and also, just considering what deliveries might happen in the evening or overnight, in my simple mind, I can only think of fuel. Somebody coming to refill the underground tanks, no traffic with people, you can pull up your semi and then fill the tanks, and I would imagine that's a lengthy process. And there would need to be some allowance for that. And if the verbiage saying actively loading and unloading, as long as we see that as a normal part of business, I think that makes sense. It's the guy who parks and leaves and it's running that causes the issue.
To clarify that a little bit, there's state law on that. For
There is?
deliveries.
Okay,
Yeah, so if you're actively unloading and loading in a delivery capacity, you have ample time to do your job. And for us to be able to stop them from doing their job and using commerce, that's not for us to decide. It's when they are parked overnight because they're out of time. Those are the individuals who typically will find spots wherever they get to, because they're at the mercy of a clock. Once they get there, they're gonna be there for 8 to 10 hours, 12 hours. It depends on how long they're intending on shutting down for. Most truck traffic that we deal with, we see them gone by 7, 8 o'clock in the morning. And as far as our farmers are concerned, if a farmer isn't getting up till 7 o'clock in the afternoon, he's way late for his day anyway. So we do have exceptions, and we understand that there's commerce that needs to be done. And this noise ordinance is a guideline and a stepping stone for us to be able to handle the ones who abuse it, not the ones who are legitimately here for commerce and trying to do business in our communities.
Go back to Mallory's question earlier about who's fined. So the zoning fine would be to the property owner, the noise ordinance fine would be to the owner or the operator of the truck.
What is the noise, what is the penalty for the noise ordinance? I just wanna make sure that it's strong enough to, I mean, do you feel like this is going to take care of this problem that's been withstanding for several years?
I think so. Judging by the tabletop that we had, going through this ordinance, I believe it covers a lot of the areas in which the complaints come in, and it gives us the ability to actually address those issues. The fineage, I don't remember what we just determined, I think we were kind of leaving that up.
The fine is determined by resolution, and we really can't establish that until we have an ordinance that says
Sure.
this is a finable offense. So certainly up for debate and open to input for what an appropriate fine would be for this. Parking, I think, is $100 right now, so.
And whatever tow fees, but we won't be towing semi.
Can we post signs like on 4th and 5th or whatever streets are,
Coming in,
like, no,
we'd have to get, I mean, we could post it on 5th,
because obviously we can't put it
Fourth.
like
For
4th.
4th.
We could post it on 4th. I think it's just important to have it on the highway.
Yeah.
And I think we'll have to get permission from DOT for that.
I think it'd be nice to have some type of signage, which I know it can be expensive, and it took a while just to get signage in general that said, no idling, but that identifies where you can idle. You know, if there's
Correct.
anything we can, or just notifying the fuel stations, so
I
that
think
they
it'd help.
can make it aware.
I think it would help the property owner too.
We did work with the property owners on it, and they did put signs up that say no idle. And we cannot expect an employee that's working a night shift at a gas station to go knock on a truck door. It's just not appropriate. That's something we would feel comfortable doing, and I wouldn't want to put any citizen in that position for their job. As far as the business is concerned, if we're getting complaints about one vehicle, yes, we tend to try to reach out to the business owner. Do we, at 2 o'clock in the morning, do we feel that's appropriate? Not necessarily. So that was another part of this, was trying to find a way that we can remedy the situation without being overbearing, but yet still being able to make sure that we are having a cure for the problem that we have.
What are the hours of the business?
I believe 11 o'clock, 11:30, 11 o'clock?
It's 11.
11 p.m. currently.
11 p.m.
Six till, and then 6 a.m.?
5 a.m.
5 a.m.?
Yeah, they're always open by the time I get there at 6, so.
I think it's important that, you know, whether we use signs or some other method, this is still a punitive ordinance, it's not a preventative measure. So it won't necessarily prevent someone from doing this, it will punish them for doing it.
No, I get it, I think it's something we could do to help the property owner too.
Right.
They can only do so much, most of it's out of their hands, they can't babysit it all night long.
Right, and I mean, if you have, you know, positions changing over, they may not be as aware of what's needed back there. So.
Chief Erickson makes a great point. You wouldn't put that on that employee.
Right.
So yeah, anything we can do to help. And we
Right.
we love having total stops in Clare in our community. So we
Absolutely.
want to do everything we can to facilitate their success. And I know they want to cooperate with this because they don't want to be a bad neighbor.
Right.
You know, so I think we can find a way that this works for everybody.
I agree.
What are your thoughts on the residents' proposal and Lauren's backing of a 10 to 7 timeline?
I mean, I don't feel that that's outlandish. Again, if they're there to conduct business, that's more on state.
Right.
If they show up at 5:30 in the morning and they're filling his gas tanks,
Right.
that's not gonna be applicable by the noise
No,
ordinance.
not at all.
If it's somebody that's parked back there at 9 o'clock at night and they're gonna stay till, 5 o'clock the next morning with the reefer truck running,
It's a big problem.
that is a problem. And again, trying to be as accommodating as possible we purposely set that area for all of our out-of-town people to go park their trucks. I think we're trying to accommodate all parties and do what we can. And we do pass that along when we're able to make contact. But there's been times where we haven't, talking with the business owner, there's been people that have come in there, nobody knew they showed up, they're there the next morning. And that's where my problem with the citizens that live over in that area, they have to deal with that until the next morning.
Right.
They don't get the option of going home because they're already there. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we want to make this right for everybody involved. I don't think one person should be penalized. I don't think it should be laid on the business owner's lap to try to control people that show up in his parking lot at 2 o'clock in the morning. That's not fair. But in the same aspect, we got to be able to work with all parties involved to make sure that the people who live over in that area have a quality of life.
So the sign that we're thinking about on Highway 17, instead of just state semi-parking available, could we put it as like marketing spin, complimentary semi-overnight parking available for free? Seriously, Industrial Avenue. Call local non-emergent police officer for a free ride home.
911 Uber?
It's gonna be a pretty big sign.
Yeah, true.
Well, we are busy.
Digital.
We don't have a problem giving somebody a ride home, that's for sure.
No. I'm joking about the last part, but just spinning it as complimentary free overnight semi-parking available in Lennox.
If there was an
Industrial
appropriate,
Drive, check it out.
yeah, if there's an appropriate way that we could put that out there and really direct our, 18-wheelers to know that that's a good place, whatever we can do, I'm all for it. Word of mouth, that works out pretty good too. For us, as the officers go, when we get called to those situations, we handle it in the same manner. We're like, hey, can you just move over here for the night? Most people don't have a problem, like I said. We've dealt with them on side roads quite a bit. Not so much over in Total Stop. The few that we've dealt with in Total Stop, either we haven't been able to make contact, probably because they're sleeping, or two, they're not in their truck. So again, that's one of those things that we'll do our best, but we're not a fixer for all. We try.
If we're gonna change it, is 10 to 7 the right number, or 10 to 6, or?
I was looking further down in this ordinance in section 5.0603, use district noise levels, and there's already, restrictions on the decibels between 6 a.m. and 10:30 p.m. and then 10:30 p.m. and 6 a.m. So perhaps it's 10:30 to 6 a.m. just to be in line with that same. Sorry, that's a lot of numbers, but but since it's already written in here, that it's restricted to 55 decibels during
Number 7.
from yeah.
I believe that's measured at a 50-foot radius, right?
I did not read it that far.
Doesn't say that.
And with total stock closing at 11, that 10:30 works pretty well.
Right.
Yeah. I don't see where it says what the radius is here.
It's on the property,
Oh, yeah, it's in there.
it's just on the property.
I just don't remember which particular subsection it's listed in.
Oh, on letter B.
Which section was it?
I was reading section 5.0603.
5.0602 has letter B, or, talks about 50 foot. And 100 foot.
Yeah, I see that now.
No.
Yeah, I agree, we should probably be consistent with that.
That way we don't have conflicting times for different things.
Makes sense.
Well, 602B, is that the one we're looking at?
Yeah. I mean, it's stated several different places in,
Yeah.
02 and 03.
Maybe a bit of a judgment call here on whether this constitutes a significant revision to the ordinance or not. If it does, then we need to do a first hearing on the new ordinance as amended, again at the next meeting, and then second reading after that.
It's really just changing the times at this point, right?
I think so, yeah.
So would you
I want to look at, draw your attention to 50602.4, loading operation.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe total stop can answer this for when deliveries are typically made to the station. This has loading and unloading between 10:30 and 6, if it's causing a noise disturbance to violate.
So if they were unloading at 5, it would be a violation?
Could be if it's causing a disturbance, if it's causing a noise disturbance. And that's a very subjective definition.
But that's how it's written today, correct? I mean, that part of this ordinance is how it's written today.
It's not
No, there's, none of that is in there today.
Okay.
It's just a simply understood, you loading and unloading. That's, you're in the act of commerce. I mean, as long as, if you're not making a racket at 3 a.m. with forklifts beeping and they're backing up with stuff off a truck, that's one thing, but that's not happening here.
I worked plenty of night shifts, and I don't recall any business that gets any deliveries before 5 a.m.
Probably the post office would be limited.
Yeah, and we're talking about where there's hand carts or if somebody's got a forklift. I don't recall of any business in town that receives that early. Late, the trucks will come in. Dollar General's probably one of the only ones that I see regularly. They'll have their truck in the parking lot after hours, waiting for the next morning for them to open up. And that's running. We've never gotten a complaint on it.
Are we best off revamping this and tackling it next meeting? I would also recommend an additional discussion with Total Stop regarding this discussion tonight, and I'd love to hear more on their take, because again, we've got two sides that have equal opportunity here to be represented properly by us. And I don't want this to fall heavily in the favor of one or the other. I'd like to find an amicable resolution for everybody.
Just so we're clear, is everybody okay with the 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., or is there a different hour?
10:30 was
10:30 to
considered
6.
with
10:30 to 6, right?
right.
Just to be in line with what all this other language is.
Thank you. We'll set up a meeting with everyone as well.
Thank you.
So no action needed for this right now. Any other discussion with regards to this item? Okay. On to B, ordinance 660, 2024 supplemental appropriations.
Mayor and council, every year we need to pass a supplemental budget to true up, so to speak, the end of year budget with actual spending. Throughout the year, actual revenues and expenses will vary from what was adopted in the months before the year began. City council has to authorize that use. We typically take care of that in the year-end supplemental budget instead of handling it as each item comes up. This year's budget is coming to you far later than we prefer, but without a finance officer for several months, I don't know that we really have much of a choice in this case. So ideally, we'll be able to have the spending authorized just prior to year-end in future years. Some highlights this year: general fund had a net gain of over $80,000. Can keep that fund balance. Tyson and I have been talking a little bit more about this capital equipment fund, and that may be a good home for this to land at, just to get that fund started off, given how many expenses we have coming up for capital equipment in the next few years. Recreation fund had a net loss again of almost $9,000. We do need to look at what our fees are bringing in and for what programs, what those expenses are. Second penny had a net loss that was planned for based on some projects and for transfer to the ambulance fund. Water fund had a net gain of $160,000. Sewer fund obviously did the best. Most of that, over $11 million in net gain, was from the agreement with the Department of Corrections. The ambulance fund, net loss of almost $100,000. We badly need rural property owners to share in the burden of providing emergency medical services in our area. We've had a lot of financial support. Many of the townships have given financial support to the ambulance this year. We're very grateful for that, but that really only makes a dent. I think the formation of an ambulance district is still on our radar this year. I think given the passage of such ambulance district in the Mitchell area at 95% of voter approval is a great indication of what we should be looking at. Because if we can't get something like that law passed and soon, we are looking at a termination of services for our rural areas. And that's a real problem for the second largest or second fastest growing county in the state. So, the swimming pool had a net loss of just under $40,000, which is actually a pretty good year for the pool. I feel pretty good about that. Pretty close to what we budgeted. So, I recommend a motion to approve the first reading of ordinance 660.
So moved.
Can I play the new girl card? Sorry. Well, I still can because it hasn't been a full year yet. So for second penny, I know you mentioned that helps cover the ambulance loss because we always have a loss in ambulance. So that $150,000 second penny loss, is that taking into account that $98,000 that you mentioned under ambulance fund?
It is.
So that 98 is actually part of the 150.
Correct. Because we transfer, whatever we end the year at with ambulance and pool, we transfer from other funds to make them whole at the end of the year. To come to a zero balance on January 1st, essentially. So for the pool, we take most of that from third penny and the rest from second penny. For ambulance, we take it all from second penny because that's an authorized use under state code.
Okay. And then for general fund, when we typically have, and maybe it doesn't happen that often, but when we have a net gain, is it typical to leave it in there, or do you tend to use that to cover?
It's difficult to leave it in there. There have been only a couple of years we've had this healthy of a net gain. So it's unusual for us to have an opportunity to move it to something otherwise beneficial. So we do need to look at, what our average fund balance is in the general fund throughout the year. Because there are months where that general fund gets down slim and sometimes negative, depending on when those property tax payments come in May and November. That's $650,000, $700,000 in those 2 months. That's to last the whole 6 months until the next payment comes in. So overall, all of our funds are separate, but the money is commingled in a single bank account, so we can still make it work. What we want to make sure we do is that we have enough general fund reserve on average to last us at least 3 months. That's what's recommended by the Government Finance Officers Association for reserve. So.
And the general fund, just remind me, that's where the bulk of salary is paid from, correct?
Yes.
Because I know there's like a portion of like Kyle and Dustin's salary that kind of comes out of sewer, right?
Yeah, we're all kind of split up in different ways.
Dependent on what department you oversee, right?
Yeah, so all of mine, for example, is just general fund. Margot Jane is just general fund. Christie, the Parks Director, would be a split between general fund and recreation fund. Finance Director split between general fund, water fund, and sewer fund, so on and so forth. The bulk of salaries comes out of general fund.
Thank you.
Okay, we had a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries.
A final note on budget, that we passed an ordinance late last year to move our budget process later this year. I have to keep reminding myself of that because I'm about ready to get into budget mode here.
I'll bet.
We've got 2 more months really before we need to start that process in earnest, so. And 5 months before we need to bring it to the council. So.
All right, I'll look for a motion to adjourn. So moved. Motion,
Second.
second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, we're adjourned.
Ooh.